Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. Stories of people that have been impacted by the healing ministry of Loma University Medical Center. People coming from around the world to be treated. People coming here seeking hope, healing, health, and happiness. Our special guest today is Alfred Wright from Pasadena. He is currently the construction inspector for the city of Los Angeles. He's also a cancer survivor. Alfred, it's good to have you here.
Thank you.
And,
it's my pleasure to be here.
Being here on the Journey of Hope, we got people from really around the world watching. And we just want to carry on a conversation here and learn a little bit about your background, where you're from, and tell them about your journey. So where were you raised? Where did you get started?
I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I went to high school there, and I went to college for about a year and a half there. Then I eventually journeyed to California, because the rest of my family was coming out to California, so I decided I better leave and come on out to California as well.
So you spent your early years there in Louisiana. What particular part?
New Orleans.
In New Orleans.
Correct.
And went to grade school and then to high school. And how many were you in your family?
There were 5 of us. There were 3 girls and 2 boys.
Right. Now you're telling me about the importance of the role of a couple of your members of the family, and why don't you tell us about that? Because in the early development of a child, and particularly as they're growing up, there's usually some people that have an impact. And who is that in your life?
My grandmother and my aunt. My grandmother basically was the one who would take us to church every week. She was the one who basically kind of kept up with us. And my aunt would come down. She lived in Virginia. She would come down and get us during the summer and bring us to Virginia and let us have some fun.
So was this your mother's sister then?
My mother's sister, her older sister.
Okay. So and you were raised in a home, and your father apparently was in and out and didn't really get acquainted. So these two, your grandmother, and I can think of the importance that my grandmother and grandfather played in my life. So, I mean, what were they doing to help you at this early stage? And I'm sure you were probably just a model as a boy growing up in grade school, and, getting straight A's for attendance and
for attendance, that's about it.
Good behavior and everything else. But,
I don't know about all that.
So, you're both your grandmother. What kind of an influence? What were they doing to help you during these formative years?
Basically, my grandmother was always, she made sure that we came home and did our homework, and she would make sure that we come at nighttime, we wouldn't stay out, and that we get to school. My mother worked a lot, and sometimes she wasn't at home, so my grandmother basically was the one who.
So the mothers kind of, keep the family together and working and putting the bread on the table, and your grandmother's keeping an eye on these kids.
As well as my grandfather, because he was there as well.
Yeah.
And so my grandmother was basically the one who was keep the eye on us and kept us in line and make sure
and
that
you
we're
had, 3, 4 brothers and sisters?
Well, I have 3 sisters, and so 3 of them were there with us, and a brother. So my grandmother kept us in line, basically. She saw that we went to school, so that we had food each and every day, and we had breakfast and lunch and stuff like that. So she was the one. And my aunt would only come down during the summer because she lived in
Virginia.
She lived in Virginia.
And came all the way down.
She came all the way down.
But she came down to visit, or did she take you back?
She would come down and visit and take us back sometimes. And matter of fact, she sent my 2 older sisters to church school for quite a few years.
So then you had an Adventist background then?
Basically, yes, to some extent.
Was your grandmother an Adventist?
Yes, she was.
And your aunt was an Adventist?
Yes, they loved the Lord with all their heart and soul.
So you went to church as a young boy there in early school, but when you came along to junior high and high school, what happened then?
Public school, and I decided, there was something else going on, and I was doing a little exploitation, and that wasn't the greatest, but I did it, unfortunate.
So you were just kind of like a lot of us were in high school, and going everywhere but the right places and doing everything but the right thing. So now, were you involved in sports at all at this time?
No, I was not. I was basically, I like to enjoy watching things.
You were a spectator.
Spectator, right.
Okay. So you finally graduated from high school there,
right,
and made your way out to California.
No, I went to Southern University for about a year.
You went to the university there in
Baton Rouge.
Oh, Baton, okay.
Right. I had a part-time scholarship, and so I went there for about a year.
What were you studying?
I was studying agricultural engineering.
Agricultural engineering,
right.
Okay. And then after about a year or so, what prompted you to come to California? Big difference between Louisiana and California.
Tremendous difference. My family was migrating constantly to California. My sisters had already gone to California. My brother was in California, and my younger sister I was the only one left basically down there. So I decided, you know, I'm getting out too. So
Everybody kind of made their way,
Right.
coming to the land of paradise in California, sunny California. Great thing. Now, when you were in your early years, were you healthy, or did you have any kind of medical problems? I mean, you're a big, strapping guy now.
yeah, well, I had thrombosis.
Thrombosis.
Right, I had blood clots in my right leg, but I was able to get around and do well. But and so I was in the hospital, you know, like maybe once a year, once every other year, because
Blood clots as a boy.
As a boy, right, and they were getting it would be my right leg, and so I wound up in the hospital for several days, and then they thin my blood out with Coumadin and stuff like that, and then I would go home and I was fine.
So that went on over the years. Then you came to California,
Right.
and when you came out here, what did you do?
Basically, I started going to school and working a little part-time, going to school part-time.
So you went back to college and still
going.
studying in business and agriculture and
Right.
and so forth. And what you told me about a couple of the jobs that you got involved with.
I started off with the city of LA as a gardener.
With the city of LA.
Right, as a gardener.
I didn't know the city of LA had gardeners.
I have hundreds of them.
Okay.
And then I became a senior gardener after several years.
Which worked right in with your agricultural engineering,
Right. Because I took horticulture in high school, and I was very good at plants and things. So I really enjoy working with plants, and I love flowers. So I was there for several years as a gardener, senior gardener, and then I tried something different. I thought I would go ahead and get a different kind of job, pay a little better money. So I applied for the Bureau of General Services, basically Bureau of Standards, and I passed the exam and they took me on. So I went for the Bureau of Standards.
So still working for the city then?
Still working for the city, but
Okay.
a different classification altogether. I was a material testing technician, and basically I would do quality control stuff for the Bureau of Public Works. We would test rebar, concrete, and dirt and stuff like that for construction sites, and we test special materials the city would buy. We would test them basically and see if they met the qualifications that were necessary
Well, there's got
to
to
be
be
used.
a lot of things that are going on in LA, and you had constantly, I mean, you're working throughout the whole, was it the county or the city? Or
City of Los Angeles.
For the city of Los Angeles.
Right. And they bought a lot of material from everywhere. So we did a lot of testing of different types of material. But mainly I worked with concrete and rebar because the city was doing a lot of building. They were building the main library. They were doing just doing a lot of major projects. And so we had a lot of work coming in. So I had a chance to do a lot of testing of materials and get a lot of exposure to construction inspectors.
Well, now, what state, how many years ago did you end up meeting your wife? Because I know we got a wife and a family we're going to talk about here in a minute. Were you working for the Bureau of Standards when you met your wife?
No, I was working for Recreation and Parks.
Okay.
And
This is before the Bureau of Standards?
Before the Bureau of
Okay.
Standards. When I was a gardener and I met my wife, I met her to a friend of mine's whom just on a site, a job site, matter of fact, they were doing some construction on the site.
Oh, I've heard this before, sure.
And I saw her and I said, wow, she's a nice looking lady. And so
Now, we need to find out, and our audience is probably interested, were you a Christian? Had you come back to the Lord? Were you still out there floating around trying to decide what life was all about? Or
I had become a Christian. I love the Lord. I given my life to the Lord, and I wanted to be involved in activities involved, So I
now,
got
this was before you met your wife?
before I met my wife.
Okay.
So I got baptized, and
This is in the Seventh-day Adventist Church?
Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay.
And then eventually I decided I like young people. I love being around young people, so I thought I would start working with young people. And I work with Pathfinders. And so this is where I got a chance to meet her again, because she worked with Pathfinders at another
So you
church.
saw it the first time, and then sometime later, was this
several years.
were you guys going to the same church then?
No, she was in a church in Los Angeles, and I was in a church in Altadena.
Okay.
So we would have trips, and so I would see her on these big outings we would have, and I would speak to her and everything. And
Kind of notice her.
right, and she noticed me, and so it was enjoyable. I got
Now,
to.
she apparently had become a Christian. Was she raised in the church?
No,
or-
she's the only member of her family who's a Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay.
She was not raised in the church, but she had dated a guy who was a Seventh-day Adventist, and he told her that he would marry her if she became a Seventh-day Adventist. So she became a Seventh-day Adventist, but things didn't
started
work out.
studying and came into conviction and then
Right.
was baptized. And
Right.
fortunately for your good luck, she broke off with the guy. And
Amen.
then sometime later, she met you.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
so then you get married. And tell us, you have a family.
I have two daughters,
Okay.
Hillary and Revita.
And they are how old now?
One is 26, and the other one will be 28 in about 7 days.
Okay. One of them is married.
And has one little boy and one on the way.
One little boy. So you got a grandson.
Got a grandson.
Okay. And I understand that you're going to be having a wedding coming up here in a few weeks.
Yes.
For the other one. And
Right.
that's exciting. I guess it's going to be a nice sized wedding. It's 5, 6 attendants, and I'm glad that you're having the joy of having your wedding now. We've had our children in the past, and they've been through the wedding experience, and it's a wonderful time to celebrate.
It's a nerve-wracking time, too.
And it's a nerve-wracking time. That's right. That's why we want to get this interview several weeks ahead of time so that you can be ready and prepared to
Right.
go into the wedding. Well, we're going to take a look at a couple of pictures of your family, and you just
Okay.
kind of tell us what we've got here.
Okay.
Speak to the pictures.
We were in, I think we were in Idaho when we took this picture near Idaho Falls. There was they had renovated the place for water and stuff and things so they could have better control of their water, and so people of Idaho had better water. So we were in Idaho when I took this picture. Okay, this is my youngest daughter, and the one on the left is Revita, my oldest one, and that's my son-in-law there,
And
Craig Newborn.
This was taken a few years ago.
2005.
Okay, 2005.
This is my son-in-law and my little grandson, and my future son-in-law on the right-hand side.
It looks like the Cap Society there. You all got hats on there.
Yeah.
All right. So that's your future son-in-law.
Correct.
Okay. And what do we have here?
Oh, my grandson, Samuel.
And he is how old now?
He's 2 years old.
2 years old. Let me tell you, they grow up fast. Well, I think that's our last picture. Now, everything's going fine for you. And have you been maintaining your physicals all along, and everything's going along fine?
Every 6 months I go and have a blood test and see
You've been doing this for over the years.
Right, for the last 4 years.
Okay. Now, you were telling us a little earlier about this thrombosis.
Right.
And that happened through while you were a young child and all the way up into high school, and even almost into college.
Right.
What kind of a problem are you having with thrombosis now?
None at all. The Lord seemed to bless, and it's gone. I don't have any problems. I play tennis. Don't even bother me at all.
So when did it go away?
When I came to California, and I think around the time I got baptized, it just
About the time you got baptized,
it just went away.
For some reason, the
Lord bless.
thrombosis has gone
It's
away.
gone away. The Lord bless.
Okay, so now you're talking about playing tennis. When did you start playing tennis?
In the early 70s.
Okay, now how do you get into tennis? I mean, I took a couple classes in college, but I play racquetball, but I haven't gotten into tennis for some reason. But you're playing tennis.
The reason I got involved was because there were several guys in my church, as well as a few females, who also played tennis. And they said, "Why don't you come on and learn this game and play with us?" And I said, "I don't want to play that." And they said, "Come on." They were very persistent.
What was your real attitude about tennis?
It was a sissy's game.
You thought it was a sissy's game. So you really didn't get into it.
Didn't get into it.
But you found out that it's more than a sissy's game.
Oh, yes.
So there's people in church, and you kind of got started there.
Right, that's where I got started.
And you're still playing tennis.
Play once a week, and sometimes I'm fortunate I get to play twice a week, but not too often.
Yeah, but you've never, ever had any more problems with the thrombosis?
No more problems at all.
Now, so you're in reasonably good health. And what was it that prompted, I mean, you got some sobering news that you had cancer, but I think before you had that, you'd had some other kind of medical challenges and actually spent some time in the hospital.
I came down, I had hemorrhoids, and they tried to tie them, and that didn't work, so they had to put me in the hospital immediately and take the hemorrhoids out. And so that's when they found out that my PSA was very high.
So you're actually in the hospital for something else. You had this medical problem, and they weren't able to do it the way they wanted to, tie it off, so you had to have surgery.
Correct.
How long did you spend time in the hospital?
I spent about a week in the hospital almost.
A week?
Almost
wow.
a week.
Hospitals are a good place to stay away from.
Amen.
And you spent a week in the hospital, and apparently you had a few little complications.
Right. One of the complications, I couldn't urinate. I wasn't urinating properly.
Okay.
And so they wanted to make sure that I start urinating. I got several infections, so they just went on in.
This is still while you're in the hospital?
Yeah, in the hospital. So they finally got it all cleared up, sent me home with a catheter, And so I had to wear a catheter for about 3 weeks almost.
Well, that's a memorable experience.
Yes, quite an experience.
And so you're home for 3 weeks, and finally got that taken care of. And finally, the hemorrhoids were taken care of. But while you were in the hospital, what did they discover about your PSA?
My PSA had reached 13.
It reached 13. Now, while we're talking here, we need to acknowledge, that African men often are more prone to prostate cancer.
Right.
So you probably had been aware of that. And a PSA of 13, that is high.
Yes.
Yeah, that is high.
'Cause
it's not really high for you. If I've got it, it's extremely high. But so you had it was 13. You probably did you know much about PSAs at that point?
Yes, I did, because basically the PSA was running around 4, and the guy said that's kind of normal for your age. And so when it got a little got to 6, and then next thing was up to 13, he said
so
something.
it jumped from 6 to 13.
Right. He said something was not right, and so my wife being very persistent, saying that you need to get this checked out, and I was kind of already had a bad experience with doing a biopsy that I did not want to go back.
So you'd previously had a biopsy.
Correct, and they
because of a higher PSA. They did the biopsy. They didn't find anything.
Everything was negative.
And now, for those that are watching, they may be frightened of having a biopsy. Your first experience was an unpleasant one, apparently?
Very unpleasant. The guy was supposed to give me a twilight shot, and he forgot it, and he said, well, don't worry about it. You can take it. And didn't take it too well.
Yeah, there's really, for the audience that's watching, there's no need to fear having a biopsy if, properly they've prepared you for it and can kind of give you a local, and you call it a twilight. Well, yeah, it is not a big thing. But I've talked to a number of men where somebody forgot to do that, and it was a big thing. And so because you had this experience, you're kind of afraid or a little bit fearful, kind of intimidated by it, and didn't want to do it again. But a faithful wife.
Very faithful.
What did she say? You need to do something about this?
You're going to do something about it.
You're going to do something about it. Well, Albert, you can't believe how many people are here, how many men end up coming here because of the wife that did the research and prompted them to go down and end up getting it. So she finally persuaded you to go and get this. It's a simple blood test. And then you ended up going back for the second time and had a biopsy.
Right, and it was much more pleasant.
And it was not a bad experience at all.
Right.
Much more pleasant when it's done properly. Okay, so several days later, apparently, did you get a phone call or did you go back to the office?
I got a phone call.
You got a phone call. And did you go into the office or did they share with you over the phone?
I went into the office.
They made an appointment and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you.
Correct.
So did you kind of have a suspicion or you thought you were going to get the report?
I thought I would get the report, basically.
Sure, going in, it's just kind of a formality, and they do this with all the patients. I'm going to go in, and they're going to just kind of go through the report with me, and then I'll go about my way. Well, you went in, and what did you find out?
I had cancer.
You had cancer.
Yes.
I mean, you had cancer. And, cancer, that's the big C.
Yeah, wow, so true.
What kind of an impact did this make on you? You had cancer. You weren't prepared for it, were you?
No way.
Now, had anybody in the family had cancer before?
No, not that.
How about your wife's side of the family?
My wife's side of the family, her mother had cancer. She died in her 30s.
Oh, her mother had cancer, and she died from the cancer. So this is all a part of the background then. And, of course, your wife has got to be very concerned about this. So you go down, the doctor shares with you, and what did he want to do? I mean, what did he want you to do? Or are you just kind of dumbfounded? What was the impact on you?
I was dumbfounded. I was totally stressed out. I mean, I was like almost deranged. I mean, like this can't be for real.
Kind of like a bad dream.
Yeah, bad nightmare, real bad nightmare. So I went home and I was crying and very upset and.
Okay, so you're crying. I think, that's an emotion. It's a release.
Right.
And there are many of us that have cried before, but it's kind of overwhelming.
Definitely.
And so, did you inform your wife on the phone or wait till she got home?
I waited till she got home.
Okay.
And then I told her, and she said, well, we'll take care of this and we'll see all the other options.
So she's kind of taking a hold of it right away. We're gonna get through this thing, and you're gonna be okay. She's trying to
She's-
assure you.
Definitely, she was 100%.
But in the back of her mind, she knows that her mother has died from cancer, and
Right.
you know, cancer is cancer. And so then you go on apparently a journey trying to figure out what you're going to do.
Correct.
And what year are we talking about now? This is what, 4 or 5 years ago?
Right, 2004.
Okay, 5, yeah, we're all right.
Right.
2004.
Right.
And when you were diagnosed, you had apparently a Gleason, which is a rating of 6, 3 plus 3.
Right.
And your PSA at that point was apparently 13. It went down a little bit, but it was high. But they came back. Now, the good news is you were diagnosed. And
Right.
you didn't think of it as good news, but I tell people when you're diagnosed, that's good news. The
That's
reason is you already had it, you didn't know it, now you know it and you can do something about it.
Correct.
Well, you're still trying to sort things out. Which one of you began doing the searching? Did both of you, or did you do this together, or?
Well, both of us, basically, we spent a lot of time. We went to the library, we went to the bookstores and looked for the latest books on the treatments that were available. We also talked to the doctors who told us the options they had provided for us, and that was surgery, seed implantation, and drugs.
Medication, sure.
Medication.
Hormones.
Hormones. And so I didn't like neither one of those, so this wasn't an option. And so one of the guys in my church had prostate cancer, and he told me, he said, Alfred, I went down every day and got my treatment and drove back home. I said, oh man, where did you go? He said, I went to Loma, and I had proton treatment. And I said, wow, that's fantastic. And then I had a friend who lived down south who also had proton treatment. And he said, Alfred, that's the way to go. If you can afford it, go that way. So we started looking around, trying to find some information about it, and there was very little information available. So we
Couldn't find out too much about it.
No,
okay?
and now doctors basically told us that it was experimental, and that it was.
You know, I need to stop right there because even today, you know, we're coming up. Next year will be the 20th anniversary of opening the Proton Center, and yet we still have people coming from across the country that said that their professionals told them that it was experimental, something out there in California, and. You know, we're coming up on 20 years, and we've treated nearly 14,000 patients. So, I mean, it's not experimental. Now, you know, our time is kind of coming down here to the end. I know that because you couldn't get in right away, that they put you on hormones. What kind of an experience was that?
Very unusual. Night sweats, crying, and just very uncomfortable.
Now, I know when, you know, occasionally men are put on hormones as a temporary type of thing. And I know that when the men, you know, they're standing up in the meeting and begin to share, and, you know, the women are saying, hey, what's the big deal? You know, like, give me a break. I've heard this stuff before. But the men, you know, they experience hot flashes, and you apparently crying occasionally. I want to ask you, did you have a tendency to want to go shopping? Just kidding. You know, some of the men that say, hey, I want to go shopping, and
my wife wanted to go shopping,
yeah.
but not me.
So anyway, you ended up coming here to Loma Linda,
Right.
and underwent the treatments. And you know, we're talking about 5 years ago, and your PSA was about 13. What is it now? Because people are watching now. Does it really work?
It's .05.
0.05, and it's been that way, bumped up and down once in a while, but it's been pretty consistently 0.05. Well, that is wonderful. Now, while you were here, did you play some tennis?
Yes, I did.
You did.
Enjoyable.
And
I had a chance to go to the center, very lovely. And
The Drayson Center.
Drayson Center, and I went there Monday through Friday, and they had a tennis machine, and I just had a wonderful time. Then I met some other guys who wanted to also play tennis because they were coming down for treatment as well, so I had an enjoyable time.
Now, I know that a couple of years ago, one of the former patients decided we ought to have a tennis tournament, a Bob tennis tournament, Brotherhood of the Balloon
Right.
tennis tournament. And they've had it, I think this is the third or the fourth year now. And I know you've been there for a couple of years. And these are people that come back together at Loma Linda. This year it was in the spring. I think we've had it in the spring, we've had it in the fall. And every year these patients come back. And what's the purpose of the tournament? Not only just to get together.
One of the main reasons is to support the Proton Center, and so we try to make donations to help continue the research so that we can improve it. So,
yeah. And every year these patients have been coming back, and the significant thing is many of them are beginning to remember in their estate planning Loma Linda University Medical Center, particularly the Proton Treatment Center. Well, what kind of a difference is having cancer making to you? And yet we've just got a little bit of time.
Okay. I think it makes you aware that you're human and that you're very susceptible to die anytime. So you have to take care of yourself. So I just advise anyone who are in their late 40s or early 50s, go and have your PSA taken and see
Simple blood test.
Simple blood test and see where you are. And if it's not right, get it taken care of as early as possible. Because
Do it on a regular basis.
Because the sooner you get it taken care of, the better you are.
Well, I know now that you're actively involved, still in Pathfinders. You're helping teach, and you've been active as a deacon and actively involved. And, you know, all of us, as we go through life, different things happen, and it depends on how we respond. And, you know, the Lord never, when things come to us, He's there, He's waiting to take us and use us. And I know that God's got plans for you and your wife and your family and your grandchildren, and God's going to use you in a great and a wonderful way. And getting cancer is just one little step along the way. You know, we have bumps, and it's a journey. And how we'll respond and how we'll react and whether or not we're going to allow the Lord to use us. And God is certainly going to be able to use you and continue to use you. And thank you for the important part that you've had in this tennis tournament and helping raise funds for the for research that's going on. And I know that God is going to bless you. And I know that you're going to have a happy wedding that's coming up. For those of you that are looking here and watching our program, Journey of Hope, Alfred, again, is just an illustration of one of the thousands of people that come here to Loma Linda and are impacted by the healing ministry. They go on to experience hope and healing and happiness. They're not only survivors, but they're thrivers. And those of you that are looking on, I know there's some here that just this week have received some very sobering news. And I want to tell you that God's got a plan for you. If you'll give Him an opportunity, look to Him right now. He will guide, direct, and bless you. Thank you.